Hello and welcome to Talking Point here on WESN Content Capital. I am Keaton Shaw.
And I'm Sean Michael Small, and this is Talking Point.
A brand new day here in Trinidad and Tobago, well, across the world actually. It's a beautiful morning. Traffic is not so bad. I mean, it flowed. Yeah, it flowed. It wasn't so bad this morning, thankfully. I assumed it's because everybody was enjoying Panorama last night.
That is more or less what I've been told as well. Potentially as much as half the country by some accounts. But
yes.
I'm actually surprised that traffic was reasonable for you, because I actually experienced unexpected traffic. Now, I don't know if it's also to do because that it's Monday, you know, beginning of the week. And as was reminded of me by one of our colleagues inside, you don't want to be missing unnecessary days, because closer to Carnival, you will be missing days, probably.
I know I will be. I'm just letting you know beforehand, by the way.
Oh, really?
just giving you a heads up. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, across the few days here in Trinidad, that Talking Point, well, was not live. A lot took place, and therefore we go straight into your daily review. Now, so as we take a look at your daily review, the first and the most important perhaps is Trinidad and Tobago has a new permanent commissioner of police, the second permanent commissioner of police in a matter of years. Earlier, Christopher was unanimously voted in as the next commissioner of police, the first female to take the position, the role.
And I do think while higher officers we've seen women take the role, so, you know, normally I would say it's not really that much of a glass ceiling. I do think that with the TTPS, it's a unique situation with a certain degree of perception of women and WPCs versus their male counterparts and all of that. I mean, I don't want to get into all of it, but I just remember an interaction somebody had where her own male counterpart of a WPC kind of disparaged the officer, who was not necessarily acting correctly, but it was still shocking, right, to hear the account, and the person who was actually in the situation was shocked by it. So I think, you know, this is good. The real question, though, is you said she's permanent, and yes, technically, that is true. She's the substantive commissioner of police. But now that she's also technically was supposed to go on pre-retirement leave and retire, this was to be her last year. Now she can continue by contract. One of the questions that was brought up was the fact that, well, and now the cabinet will essentially approve or disapprove renewing the contract. What does that mean moving forward? I'm not going to necessarily say what cabinet will or will not do, or, you know, if the system is evil or not, but it does beg the question, you know, having a commissioner by 3-year contract, is this really the optimum thing? One could argue that it is. One could argue that it is, because you want a limited term. You don't want them to be such a permanent fixture they get complacent on job.
Well, earlier with Christopher, COP-elect, yet to be sworn into her position, her post. I wish her all the very best. You know, I look forward to what she can bring to the table. Fresh perspective, change, who knows? We might be surprised, or we might just grow accustomed to the same old thing. Whatever it is, let's wait to see. I was rather impressed, though, and just bear in mind, it's always easy when you get to that stage, or when you get to that position. Words just come very cheap, come very easily. But she said she will not be persuaded by political influences, and that she will uphold the integrity of her office and of the position. Good luck. That's all I will say, because words, as I mentioned before, is very, very cheap and very easy to come by. So I just wish you all the very best in your position, and I really hope that she does it well, and public perception, at least whether or not statistically the figures reduce or go down, at least I hope the public feels a sense of security.
I actually think that she has an uphill battle for a lot of reasons, some of which are not even under her control, but we'll get into that when we get to the question of the day.
But before we do that, just before we move on, very quick thing, Sean. You know, you mentioned you don't think it's a substantial glass ceiling, and it's a fair point. But do you think, and
in some respects, yes, and in some respects, no.
And let's just try and you know, be honest with ourselves here. Do you think that there will be those within the service who might not want to take her seriously or take instructions from her because she is a female?
Not necessarily, no. I think, though, that her background with regards to her practical experience in the job, I think a lot of the time was spent in administration. But I do believe she also, I can't remember now, it wasn't completely at administration. But now will come the question where, you know, well, you didn't come up, you know, investigating crimes on the streets from the ground up, so why should we listen to you? You don't know what you're talking about. The reality is that's not always a bad thing. It really depends on the individual and how they approach the job. If they don't have as much direct experience as some of their subordinates, because there's multiple different fields, so you're not going to have as much as somebody who's been in one role for the majority of their career. You could still be a good leader, administrator, manager, supervisor, overseer, etc. It just depends on your approach. Are you going to come at as though your opinion is the only one that matters, or will you be collaborative and reasonable and listen to what they have to say first, but rein them in, because ultimately you are the commissioner of police. You know, you are responsible for what these officers do.
Well, we'll get to our question of the day later on, but in the meantime, as we continue with the daily review, we head across to the next topic, and we stay with the Commissioner of Police because it involves, her first task, I suppose, is dealing with the opposition's plan to write her to investigate the Office of the Attorney General, as well as the Attorney General himself, Reginald Amor, because it seems as though there's a lot more questions over the operations of the AG's office here in TNT. A lot more.
Well, two daily newspapers put out some pretty detailed articles. One had a pretty detailed timeline. The other one, quoted government sources, so it's anonymous. But basically, according to, if you take it at face value, there are those within that ministry, I believe, or within government service who are saying, well, look, at the end of the day, the practical reality is that the Solicitor General office was the ones that dropped the ball. They were responsible. However, the legal fraternity, some of them are like, look, at the end of the day, the AG is the guy in charge, is the head of the table, and some, if not the ultimate responsibility falls on his lap. Some of the things that they said there, they pointed out that, look, they had several opportunities to correct this. The term used several bites at the cherry. Right, and to some extent, they even, I believe one of the articles, named names of the person who received when the lawsuit came in. So we know at the very least that they've identified, they have something of a paper trail, they've identified the parties involved. Now it just all depends now on motive and intent, and if they have a complete paper trail on what happened in this scenario.
Well, as mentioned previously, that ties back into absolutely everything with respect to the I suppose, carnival that's taking place in the Attorney General's office, because the opposition Senator Wade Mark yesterday confirmed that they are going to bring up a motion of no confidence against the Attorney General, Reginald Amor. And bear in mind, as much as people might say that just doesn't make any sense at all. You know, in order for a motion of no confidence to work, you need to have a majority in order to oust the individual. Not necessary. You see, back in between 2010 and 2015, I think 3 motions of no confidence were brought forward by then opposition leader Dr. Keith Rowley, and they were very much effective. So it all depends on how the opposition is going to approach the situation, their communication, and what they're going to bring to the table. But the debate over Reginald Amor and his position, and whether or not he's fit to hold, perhaps he's qualified, whether or not he's fit to actually hold the position, well, I think thus far we're less than impressed.
Well, one thing though, I wasn't able to find it, but did it say who was conducting the investigation? Or because it was just, the press conference just said all relevant agencies to bear.
Yes, there was one individual. The name slips me right now. I will actually get that information for you.
Because the former Judge
Ralston
Nelson is advising.
He's advising.
Right.
Yes, he's advising the Attorney General Rachel Moore over the investigation, as well as how to go about approaching the situation with Vindra Naipal Kuman, the acquitted, because there was a civil lawsuit and the appeal. He's advising him over the appeal as well.
The reason why I say that is I do believe, with regards to the appeal, I believe it has to go through him, right? For better or worse, he's sitting in jail. With regards to the investigation, one could argue that he is also someone to be investigated because he oversaw at least the back end of this entire fiasco. Whether he was aware or not, an independent investigation will go a long way to clear him of direct responsibility. Now, one could argue that he still has the responsibility of, I am the guy in charge, it still ultimately falls on me that this happened under my watch. But direct involvement, he shouldn't be in charge of that. Somebody else should be appointed, and then they should be independent of him and potentially, the cabinet. But
well, put it this way. To tell you how much the Attorney General really did not have a clue, you go back to the press conference and you look at the fact that at least on 3 occasions he said Vidya Naipal, right? Not Vindra Naipal. He said Vidya Naipal. And that's in referencing V.S. Naipal, by the way.
Now, so it's a catch-22, folks. Normally I would say he's not a career politician, but he has, I would assume, gone up in high-profile trials and have had to make presentations and opening and closing remarks and questioning witnesses and all of those things that you generally see on TV. It's not as though he's new to communicating and talking. That is one of the skills that lawyers should have. But the flip side is, other than that, I actually don't have an issue with how he's handled it so far. I would just advise him, listen, you need to be as far away, removed from the investigation now, because you are somebody who technically is supposed to be investigated. One of them.
I mean, I suppose we have differing opinions and views, but that's...
yes, mixing up the names is bad. But
anyway, as we move on with our data review, we get into the last story. And who saw this coming? I don't really think any of us did, at least with respect to Trinidad and Tobago. Now, the president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, has chastised and publicly, the United States for allowing other nations to export oil and gas from Caracas without any cash transactions. Now, if you recall, a couple of weeks ago, Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley held a press conference in which he stated that the United States waived all sanctions against TNT in allowing them to access the Dragon gas field. However, he did mention that one of the stipulations would be no cash transactions. Now, whilst the Prime Minister acknowledged that there was still a long way to go and that they needed to negotiate with Venezuela, in all fairness to him, he did acknowledge it. At the same time, I think negotiations just got 10 times harder.
So I do remember, I did say my main concern was the wild card that is Nicolas Maduro. I can't remember who said it, if it was a caller, if it was you or Karen, but I actually do think it was reasonable to say, and it was a reasonable expectation, that you're not going to announce this deal if you did not engage with the Venezuelan Prime Minister Nicolas Maduro, right? Prime Minister?
President.
President, sorry. And I think that's reasonable. Why would you announce this thing and now, and essentially leave him out of it, not finish that part of it? Because I'm not entirely sure exactly how this will work moving forward, because if he decides to make a big stink about it and not cooperate, what does that mean? Would we be stealing from him if we try to move forward? Will he try to contest it? Will it cause a further or a larger incident? Because the announcement apparently is far more one-sided we would expect. So, like I said, somebody said that they were sure that there was engagement with Maduro to make this announcement. I think that that assumption was more than reasonable. What's surprising is to find out that that actually or apparently did not happen. To be fair, he just could be, they might have engaged him and he might have been non-committal, or who knows how it happened behind the scenes. And he might just be big enough, making us stink out of the situation because politically that's what he wants to do. He feels he has to do. to get whatever he wants out of this deal.
Well, given the relationship between Venezuela and the United States, in fact, the only time that you've really seen so much harmony, at least in modern times, between the United States and Venezuela was, I don't know if you recall, right here in Trinidad and Tobago, during the Summit of the Americas, President Barack Obama actually, and Hugo Chavez, they embraced each other. Right, but since then the relationship has declined even further following the passing of Hugo Chavez.
Which is ironic because Hugo Chavez was probably, he was one of the originators of the ideology that Maduro is currently
exactly. In
operating
fact,
under.
Maduro was Chavez's right-hand man, and that's why he succeeded. But anyway, the relationship between the United States and Venezuela has been poor, to say the least. The relationship between Trinidad and Tobago and the United States, well, put it this way, we've done very well thus far if we've kept in the good books of the United States, but also geopolitically it works in our favor. There's so many factors actually that you could consider when analyzing your relationship with other nations.
Yes.
The United States, China, for example. Our relationship with Venezuela, and I must confess that what this government has done under the leadership of Dr. Keith Rowley with respect to the relationship with Venezuela, specifically that, has been brilliant. And we've been able to maintain that level of diplomacy. There is that working relationship between Trinidad and Tobago. And yes, the announcement, not ill-timed, I think it was all right for the Prime Minister to announce it's Trinidad and Tobago. I don't think it would have taken Nicolas Maduro by surprise at all.
Yes.
I don't think it would have taken it. But you're right. The only reason why he's probably come out and said all that he has said is because he has to take a certain position. And also, let's be honest, let's be fair at the same time. It's going to be rather interesting, the negotiations, because cash transactions are off the table. So is it just going to be food and supplies?
Well, and here's the thing, at the end of the day, it's still resources. And if I was him, I would have more or less accepted the deal, right? Depending on how long term it was and what I think my prospects are for turning my international relations, well, the perception of my nation around. So I would have taken the deal if I was him, but at the same time, if I was him, it would be a much different scenario, for better or worse, right? So it's interesting, and to be fair to the Prime Minister, for the most part, I don't think this is his fault. I'm pretty sure he has been pushing for this deal and negotiating and been putting things in place for this deal for the last 3 years, maybe longer. More or less once it came out and then was blocked, all through the pandemic, all of his international engagement with the energy sector, you could argue, was to try, not just for the region, but also to specifically try to get this deal off the ground.
Well, that's it for your day review here on Talking Point. We're going to take a quick break here, ladies and gentlemen, and when we return, well, matters of national security on the table. Again, not surprising, is it? We'll be right back after this.
Join me, Dr. Nalini Kokram, on What's Up Doc, where we discuss all your burning questions concerning health.
Trinidad and Tobago is among one of the highest risk group of patients that develop this form of genetic breast cancer.
What I'd like to take home from a short interview like this, screening. You must screen.
Because it's silent.
It's silent.
Yeah.
And because it's silent, you don't know it's there.
What's Up Doc, every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays, 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen, on the only station in the nation that broadcasts in HD, WESN. And something new has developed once again, this time with regards to the Air Guard as a service of our national security arm that we don't hear that much about. Now, those of you who have, a long time watched of the news, Keita, and you all would have known or remember, there were some issues with the helicopters a while back, and if they could fly, and if they maintain, and if they have gas. Where have we heard that before?
I think even one crashed a year or two ago when they were searching for prisoners, yeah.
So it's part of the national security apparatus. One would argue both for border security, as well as potentially other law enforcement aspects, but as well as for search and rescue. I mean, we're an island nation surrounded by water. There are a lot of remote areas that's difficult to reach to by land. There's a lot of uses we could get out of these helicopters. But right now, with the crime that's going on, border security is somewhat of an issue. So, with regards to this, our editors put together a little package there just to kind of show, some of where we're coming from with regards to our national security equipment and what it could do for us, as we can see in another jurisdiction. So it's time to cue this.
While all arms of national security are working to secure this country's borders, the National Security Minister acknowledged that this country's borders are porous by virtue of location and limited resources. But Minister Fitzgerald Hines says efforts are being made to increase surveillance and detection of illegal immigrants.
Now, this sort of puts Venezuelan migration into perspective for you guys.
While all arms of national security are working to secure this country's borders, the National Security Minister acknowledged that this country's borders are porous by virtue of location and limited resources. But Minister Fitzgerald Hines says efforts are being made to increase surveillance and detection of illegal immigrants.
Now, this sort of puts Venezuelan migration into perspective for you guys.
And the Chief of Defense Staff, Daryl Daniel, says some of the current air and sea assets are down, but will soon be ramped up.
62% of our assets are working, and within the next week that will rise to 75%.
When it comes to technology, the North Dakota National Guard has capabilities that are making a huge impact on illegal immigration. They provide assistance to Border Patrol agents on the ground. With the use of night vision cameras, the sensor operator can zoom in on heat signatures of people along the border.
You can kind of pick out patterns, and Border Patrol agents have a certain uniform that they wear that we can pick out. If they say, hey, we would like you to look in this area, we're looking for 5 to 6 people, and that's what we're scanning around for.
The aviators then communicate back to this room.
This is our radio communications room.
From there, agents are dispatched to apprehend undocumented immigrants and prevent drug drug smuggling.
The fact of the matter that we have the National Guard pilot, the capabilities they do to be able to communicate with our agents on the ground, and the fact that they're able to see at a higher level, giving us a bigger perspective of what's going on, they're able to identify threats that are seen and not seen by the agent on the ground.
It's little over an hour's drive in boat from where we are right now. It's not hard to cross these borders.
All of you who are sworn and who are paid to conduct exercises in the protection of the people of Trinidad and Tobago who are suffering great trauma and pain and tears, you need to step up your game.
Providing a sense of security for the national public is what their job is all about.
Now, video was courtesy CNT3, KXMB-TV, and our own Mr. James Lancer from TNT. And to be fair to the Minister of National Security, Keaton, I could see a world where the borders, as much as it's talked about a lot, it might not be as pressing as other concerns, and I could see why the resources now to maintain that maritime patrols, when we have a shortage, might be seen to be, okay, if we don't have it, we can't really afford to maintain it. And here's why. Hear me out.
You have my attention.
Hear me out. We do know, or at least it was said by the authorities, I can't remember who exactly, if it was the TT, I think it was the Commissioner of Police. He revealed that a lot of the guns are brought in through legal ports of entry.
Well, he said 5% of guns.
5% of guns?
5% of guns, yeah.
Okay. But the thing is, though, from what I understand, the practice would be, yeah, we'll bring in the marijuana, the bulk, difficult because you just need so much of it. You'll bring it through this sort of border crossing. But for your high-end, more expensive illegal narcotics, and for items like firearms, because we've seen it, it might be easier or more reliable to try to get it through legal ports of entry.
5%.
I mean, we know that I'm sure, I don't think it was 5%.
5% of illegal guns on the street come from Venezuela. That's the statistic.
Right, no, but
Venezuela.
I think he was pointing out the fact that a lot of it comes through the legal ports.
Yes.
Right. So with regards to, there was that controversial situation where cocaine heading up to North America was found in, local manufacturer's product. So that sort of smuggling, the helicopters, the Air Guard won't really necessarily prevent. The flip side of that, though, is even if one could make a case that, all right, look, this is not the priority because this is not going to really stop the hard drugs and the guns. The fact that you're keeping these pilots on the hook and you're giving lip service to the importance of the arms. To be fair, the Minister of National Security actually did not name the Air Guard. He was listing out the various services. He did not name the Air Guard in that clip. You can't keep these guys on the hook. And they, as it was reported, they claimed that they were at times not being paid, at times not being called out to work. Their contracts were always up in the air. During COVID, they had to sort out themselves.
Well, an entire summary of this situation with respect to the Air Guard pilots in particular and how this really impacts upon national security is the fact that 3 senior pilots have now tendered their resignation and are due to walk off the job. The reason being, as my coach just mentioned, their contracts were always up in the air. They're senior pilots and they were actually told that they were going to get a 2-year contract when they've had 3 successive 3-month contract extension. But from what I understand, all those working in the public service actually have been receiving 3-month contract extensions, simply because I suppose the government cannot guarantee that they could employ you beyond those 3 years. I'm assuming that's the reason why. Furthermore, they're suggesting that they have pilots within the Air Guard who are not trained to carry out the missions that are necessary, and that one of the helicopters have been down for quite some time and the other one has been having operating issues. Furthermore, over the course of the COVID-19 pandemic, when Venezuelan migration was very high...
And we got the variant from South America.
Yes. It was said by these pilots who chose to remain unnamed, anonymous, that they had to work throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. They had no sick leave, and as a consequence, they actually all contracted COVID-19 and still had to work. And these are just one of the reasons why. The main issue is actually the operations taking place with respect to the functioning of these helicopters. And I'm glad you put that into place, because I am sorry, I disagree with you when you suggested, let's be fair to the Minister of National Security. And even though I heard your reasoning, it's because if I were the Prime Minister and I woke up this morning and I saw this taking place, the first thing to do would be to sit down and speak to my Minister of National Security. And if I'm dissatisfied, he's gone. Well, and quite frankly, I'm at a stage already where I'm completely dissatisfied. Does it even make sense?
So, ironically, I have two more things to say, one for and one against, right? First of all, the main thing is, to what extent do we think that the Minister of National Security is left to run his ministry independently? I don't think so. Remember, the Prime Minister made a big deal. He is at the head of the National Security Council, right? So between that and the fact that the national security budget is controlled by the Ministry of Finance, I do wonder to what extent, how much leeway, how much independence does Minister Hines have, so then we could then say, oh, the bulk of the responsibility is on you.
But we could make that same argument for every other ministry.
Right, and then now, he's still culpable to some extent as a member of cabinet, but it's a cabinet issue and not necessarily a one-man issue, right? And again, it is distribution of resources. Every government goes through this scarcity. We understand that. My issue is just be upfront, explain the situation, say why, okay, you don't think this is reasonable to go full tilt on any further, no pun intended, but do that up front. Don't kind of give us the lip service and everything is fine and things are going to work out and we're going to bring everything to bear. And then you have situations like this where behind the scenes a lot of things are going wrong. Because one of the pilots did say, look at the murder rate now. When I was working at the National Operations Center, every day we were out on a murder call and there was a resolution to it almost immediately. And these pilots, they were transferred from the National Operations Center, a team, to the Air Guard. And my thing is, one of the ways to justify having an asset like a helicopter is not just use it for border patrol. I mean, think about it. If you have a helicopter hovering on station above the northwest of the island, right? You could both cover the direct route. You're in position where you could move to cover the direct route from Venezuela to the northwest of Trinidad, as well as you could easily just turn in your direction and before too long, you'll be over Port of Spain. And then if there's something that the police on the ground need to track, you have an aerial view, you could help them track.
Do you recall back in 2017 when the Prime Minister actually complained about the cost of operating helicopter aircraft and actually grounded 4 of them? Subsequent to that, let's take another look at national security from the police perspective. Do you recall, I think it was about 2 years ago, where it was early last year or the year before, where the Prime Minister then said that he's aware the TTPS need new vehicles, but he sent back the list saying find cheaper vehicles.
Yes.
Right, great.
I do think, though, that eventually they did buy SUVs. I could be wrong on that. It's a long time ago. But I think they eventually did buy the vehicles the police wanted to buy.
Have you seen the vehicles that the Trans-Tobago Police Service are driving right now? I'm talking about Nissan X-Trails. I'm speaking of Hyundai Tucsons. I'm speaking about Hilux vehicles, right? So I don't know what the Prime Minister was trying to say at that point. Go back and send back a list to those suppliers who we approve of, if that's what he was trying to say. I don't know. The mere fact is, at the end of the day, whether or not Fitzgerald Hines has full running or full control of his ministry, he's there in that position. He's the minister that is accountable.
That is true.
And the Prime Minister may be head of the National Security Council, but unfortunately, he's not a good head of a National Security Council.
So here's the thing. With regards to those vehicles, I do remember that Commissioner Griffith had pushback. It might have even been on this show, then Commissioner Griffith, when he was basically saying, look, you need to understand the reason why these vehicles get worn out, generally speaking, right? Poor police conduct, set that aside. Generally speaking, you know, the day shift will use it, the afternoon shift will use it, the night shift will use it. They're running the vehicles. Now, one could argue the unnecessary sirens wailing, I need to get through traffic or gun down the highway. We could do without that. And the Prime Minister was to some extent correct to call out that. But how much is that widespread, right? the vehicles just generally are going to be used near 24/7, or at least I believe that's what the then Commissioner Griffith was saying at the time. So there's both sides of that issue. Same thing with the helicopters. Technically speaking, you want more or less one, probably more than one, because you want to cover the Northwest as well as the South. But the Northwest might give you the most returns on investment because you could cover the capital, which has a significant amount of the murders going on, as well as the Northwest Peninsula. Do we need it? One could argue, well, there was a time when we didn't have these things. Maybe we are too small to maintain, you know, a unit of helicopters to be effective, right? One helicopter is not, you can't really do enough patrols. But you didn't dismantle it, you didn't present it, make a case to the public, you just kind of left it there. And I think that's the problem. It leaves the public thinking, well, I thought we had this. Why aren't we using it when you say no stone unturned, pull out all the stops?
Given our geopolitical position and given also the fact that we're a transshipment point, we're not an island that is too small to maintain a helicopter service.
Well, so in the States, like in that clip, it was the federal government, it was the National Guard that was supplying the helicopters for the local border patrol. So, you know, those things are expensive.
You're also speaking about two different economies. I'm not saying that,
well, exactly.
I'm not saying that they're not expensive. I'm saying that considering the amount of money we've spent over the years of waste of time national security apparatus, such as you remember the blimps? Well, let's not go too far back.
So to some extent, the blimps will do some of the things helicopters could do. What I don't think they can do is say you're tracking a car with a suspect leaving Port of Spain. I'm not too sure a blimp could keep up, depending on if there's no traffic and the car could gun it down the highway.
My concluding point on this situation is, if I were to read all these stories about issues plaguing national security over the last few years, even now, just without absolute knowledge, just suddenly just sit down and go through the archives and read all these articles, I would question, as a human being with common sense, whether or not the national security system is deliberately designed this way, whether or not our borders are open deliberately. If we have knowledge or intelligence that guns, drugs, ammunition are coming in through legal ports of entry and through legal means, and you know what I mean through legal means, because it's illegal to bring these in, but through legal means, then I'm thinking to myself, and the scan at the port has been down, but the scan at the airport is always working. Well, at least we assume so. I would think that this system is deliberately designed this way and set up to benefit few here in TNT. Who exactly are they benefiting? Well, I can't call names exactly, but you would wonder whether or not, and I'm questioning it, whether or not there is some form of relationship between powerful businessmen, gangs in Trinidad and Tobago, and those within authority. And understand why I'm asking a question. Liability is a hell of a thing. Right? Understand why I'm asking a question. Because you might be the viewer saying, Keaton, that's a stupid question. Isn't it obvious? Of course there is. In this position, I have to be very careful what I say.
Well, here's the thing. The pilots are saying, look, we no longer have radios to speak to the people on the ground. We no longer have infrared cameras in order to work more effectively at night. And the article details, or at least some claims where in different situations they were able to make a difference immediately with regards to crimes, finding suspects, or in the case where there was civil unrest, having an overwatch of the situation so they could monitor it properly without having to put an officer like right next to a powder keg and potentially triggering some kind of situation or worsening situation or causing an aggressive person to decide to take his frustration out on the poor officer that's there in front of him. So it's a capability that, as they say, the cameras were removed and placed in a box and left to waste. The capability was more or less left to waste. One could argue, though, that we saw the same thing with Coast Guard patrols. Now, to what extent, again, what you just said, because Mr. Fisherman would call in and say, well, when they asked for the Coast Guard, they said they have no gas. And we know that sometimes Coast Guard patrols, well, we don't know, sorry, it is alleged, that Coast Guard patrols might not run on certain days when they're told not to run.
Well, but there's also no Coast Guard at night in the Gulf.
There's no Air Guard at night, there's no Coast Guard at night.
When you hear all these craft operating on the water, heading straight into the Caribbean. But, you know, we have to go for a break now. But think about this. You remember earlier how you're saying it's probably just too expensive overall. Sean, we're purchasing the equipment, we're just storing them away. So, it's too expensive.
No.
We're just storing them.
You purchase the equipment to look good for the cameras. That's what all the administrations do. And then you leave it to the next guy to figure out how you're going to maintain it when it gets a few years old. Because the first 2 to 3 years, yeah, that thing could run. We don't have to worry about heavy maintenance. Wait till 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, and all of a sudden, all the things that was bought now,
a brand new car.
Chicken comes home to
If you
roost.
purchase a brand new car from a dealer, you have to get it serviced every 3 months in order for the warranty to be maintained.
Well, yeah, okay, that's true too.
Does not apply.
That's true too.
Doesn't apply anywhere else. Anyway, let's take a break here on Talking Point. When we return, we welcome our guest this morning.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing on it.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Paul?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the right and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
With society plagued by a host of issues, with debates surrounding our urgent concerns falling short, with questions of our future not always being answered.
The conversation continues. Join me, Kemuel Pascal, as the voice of the youth comes to life. We will confront the controversial topics of today's world to gain answers that are key for a better tomorrow. One and One with me, Kemuel Pascal. Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Only on WESN Content Capital.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
The best birthday gifts are at thebesttoys.com. Shop for the best brands you love at the best prices. Like VTech, Leapfrog, Fisher-Price, Play-Doh, Hot Wheels, Barbie, Cocomelon, LOL, Baby Alive, Crayola. Visit us in-store at Forces Flagship MacBean. Shop online now at thebesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 32DBEST to order. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion.
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Welcome back to Talking About, ladies and gentlemen, on your content capital, WESN. Keaton Shaw, Sean Michael Small here. And of course, it's Monday. We have with us our media ambassador from the TTPS. He is acting ASP Ashraf Ali, the man that is in the Monday hot seat. As always, good morning, ASP.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
It's always nice to be in the hot seat. It's nice to be in the hot seat.
I mean, it can't be easy to have to represent the frontline organization when crime is what it is. Let's just be.
It is. So it's like I continue to say. I mean, persons may not like to hear it. Our colleague across from my side, to my extreme right, don't like to hear the word work in progress. But it is. Right? I mean, the dynamics are changing, things are changing. Fortunately for Trinidad and Tobago Police Service at this point in time, we have made history. We have the first female commissioner. And I want to say publicly congratulations to Ms. Ula here with Christopher. She has made a lot of, she has been in the police service for more than 40 years. This is her time she has reached that elevation stage, so she's now the head of the organization and she has the support of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. The challenge she is going to face, she is the person in the hot seat. I am not in the hot seat, right? But she is the person in the hot seat, and we wish her all the best in her endeavors. So this is the challenge we can face. But right now we're going into the hotter seat, which is Carnival is almost 14 days out. 14 days out, and we're going to hit the mother of all Carnival. And safety and security is important, but safety on the whole, because last night, I should say, and coming to this morning with Panorama, I had to work Panorama last night. So I finished around 1:30 this morning after the event. A number of persons have been at the enjoying the atmosphere at the grandstand and consuming the amount of alcohol in different areas. And then after that, I would have seen a lot of persons. We actually had to tell some person, take a rest, store out in your vehicle because you can't drive out of here, right? Some of them, but then you always have a lot of persons going out in the streets, and we continue to say that if you try as best as possible, have a designated driver. The number of vehicles that you're seeing there also that are parked in and around. So the Queen's Park Savannah would have provided some level of parking within the compound, which was good. But then you have a number of persons still parking on the side streets, which poses a risk at the same time because they leave opportunities for persons to steal a vehicle. And they're not only stealing a vehicle, they're going for what you call buying batteries, battery buying, right? Buying scrap buying. Those are the fast products that they look to take out one time. So they take your battery and go with it. If you can't take your car, a battery is gone, and they have resale for the value for the battery. They may not sell it for scrap because somebody is going to buy a relatively new battery at it. So this is where a lot of persons have this opportunity because it's a market. So they're utilizing that opportunity for that purpose, right? Then we had the issues continue to have the issue where, and we want to reinforce this now, that we have the issue of persons selling alcohol, which is a historical perspective from Carnival. We see a lot of persons selling alcohol for Carnival on the streets. You know how they call it bucket brigades?
Yes.
Everybody walking around with a bucket. That is illegal because that individual who is selling there does not have a license. The license might be fixed to someone who has who went and paid there under the Liquor License Act 8410. There's a section for special events which will be declared via legal notice for carnivals that given their carnival era. It's $10 for the license and $10 for every day that the license is running. But you, Sean, will apply for the license. But you hire Keaton with a bucket to walk all the way around the place with the alcohol. Keaton is also selling alcohol because he's collecting the money while he's moving. So he needs a license at the same time.
Keita might not come back with the alcohol.
And
right? Or the money.
So because of how it is, how Carnival is so structured and in the volume of persons are not coming to you to purchase because you want to maximize your profit during that period. So you are sending out the arms of your business. So you're allowing persons to go and sell alcohol on your behalf, which is an offense at the same time.
Let me ask you, because this is something that you also see within the Queen's Park Oval when there are events, and you would assume that these individuals, because there are many of them walking around selling beers within the Oval, do not have a liquor license, right? We're making an assumption. But just as how you've just used, that reference with people selling out arms, the individual who's actually selling the alcohol may not have the license. Could you tell me, by chance, how many of these individuals, because you're speaking about it, have actually been arrested by the TTPS or charged?
So we would have charged individuals over the years for that, but we realized that that approach may not be in the best interests, right? So what we do is we try our best at this point in time, leading up to Carnival, sending out the messages that it is an offense. We would have seized a lot of persons and took the alcohol and everything like that, and they were charged. The statistical data over the years, I don't have how many persons specifically for Carnival was charged for that. But we all know Carnival is an opportunity for our individuals to earn a living. So we are trying to inform them that earn a living the legal way. So you're not supposed to sell alcohol, beers and things, do not. But we as trainees try all opportunities, because when you look at a cooler, when you go to look at a cooler, and if a police officer has to really manage this or monitor it, he has to go and look for every cooler and see where he has beers. These fellas are so creative. You see all the drinks on top of the beers at the bottom. We trainees know who to go by, where the beers and the other things are being sold. Now we also have the other issue where you have alcohol in the nips, let's call them, the small bottles. Those are hidden and in the area.
But it would also be the same thing for cigarettes. You're not supposed to sell cigarettes without having a tobacco license. And I see that on the street all the time. But bear with me here, because I find it rather contradictory what you're telling me, from the sense that, listen, you are not supposed to sell alcohol without a license. The license is cheap. Right now, using a trading intelligence, we know who to go by in order to purchase the alcohol. I would assume that the TTPS will use some of that intelligence as well, so they know who to go by to search for whoever is selling alcohol by legal means. With all that being said, it's contradictory if you're saying to me that we recognize and realize that this approach is not the best, it's not the most appropriate, because even if the license is cheap, the run around to probably get that license in itself is probably most frustrating. I wouldn't like to. I mean, he's trying to get things done with a business as is. It's frustrating.
But I would tell you those licenses are very simple to get.
Right, but how are you going to stamp it out if you're not taking affirmative action?
So the aspect of it, because of it's illegal. During Carnival period, there are special events. It is cleared as a special event, so the licenses are relatively cheap. When you look at Carnival per se, along the route you will have persons who pay for license and fixed up at different locations. It issues that those persons have their license. It is not a question about whether or not they have license or not. The challenge you have now is how they utilize or run their businesses. So you may not know that someone is selling alcohol because the persons that they're hiring really and truly is working working alongside the person with the license. But that individual, once he leaves that premise, that location that the license is for, that little booth that they pay for, right? Because they give them a little number for Carnival with the assigned person, the corporation assigned a certain booth with a number and everything like that. That is what the license is for. When you allow someone to live there with a bucket and go to the other side of the street and distribute and sell because you are now selling the alcohol. You don't have a license for across the street. You, the individual who's doing that on behalf of that individual, does not have a license. So that could confiscate all the alcohol from that individual who doesn't have a license. So it's unfortunate that you will end up arresting someone who is working for this individual who has a legitimate license. So challenging that individual with a license, it means that he's using the license. He or she is not using the license contradictory, you know. He employs someone to do it. And those are the hustlers. So you're going to so you come back to you're going to arrest all the hustlers and take away the alcohol. But at the end of the day, the person with the license who is supporting it, and the law states that if you are supporting it, you can lose your license. And then you charge that individual, you go before court, Carnival Monday and Tuesday, case, that's it. Carnival Monday and Tuesday, special events license no longer existing. So over that 2 days, the license only valid for that special event Monday to at the end of the year. The person gets charged, they don't continue it anymore. But managing that is extremely difficult because police officers on the whole, when you have the other issues of crowd, other issues where people have pickpocketing, we have other challenges you're facing, you don't really, the officers would not really go and check to see if you have alcohol being sold in the bucket or anything like that. Like I said, so during that period, we try to have a little leeway, but at the same time, through our safety tips and through informing the public the challenges they're going to face and the amount of fines that they're going to face, getting them to understand, yes, we are tolerating a discretionary power because of carnival, but it's still against the law. Same thing like a seatbelt. If you don't wear a seatbelt, we can speak to you about it, not give you a ticket, right? Because you may have a circumstance, and understanding circumstance, we treat with it from that perspective. So being hard and fast is one, but at the same time, understanding the culture and understanding carnival and what carnival means to a lot of persons from a financial perspective, we have to be a little more community-oriented in that aspect of it.
I think some people might say, well, what's the big deal? It's just going across your road to sell more beers. But I think it comes down to the fact that you can't allow the situation to get out of control. Because, of course, once the hustler sees, oh, I could do this, what else could I get away with? And then once somebody sees, oh, that guy with the license has it, he's doing it, well, why do I even need a license for it?
On the flip side, Sean, your daughter, who's probably 16 years old, and who doesn't look 16. A lot of these 15 and 16-year-olds look like they're 20s. Could be posting alcohol.
I remember I was in Tobago one August, beginning of August or so, and I remembered, a lot of minors just around me got drunk. This is when I was much younger. I might have still been in school myself. Come the next year, signs everywhere. Alcohol cannot be sold to persons under the age of 18.
Yeah.
Just everywhere. So when things get out of hand, you don't want it to necessarily get at that point because something will go wrong. But I guess the question is, to what extent will the police crack down on these things if it does get out of hand?
And that is why we try, because we try leading up to Carnival, and because it's a special event.
Does it happen also at other times, not just at Carnival?
I would say not on a regular basis. Right? But once we have events, you would get some, because really and truly persons will more sell food and other food and drinks outside of alcohol when they go to a normal event out of Carnival. But Carnival brings a different dynamics to these type of things.
Well, Acting ASP, we had a break for news in about 30 seconds, but let me just tell you this before we go for news. Right? Yes, I must tell you this. I sometimes wonder if the TTPS has common sense at all. Because it seems as though the sense of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service does not make any sense at all. Yeah, I hear the example, we know culturally and what Carnival might mean financially. Okay, using that same argument, they have businesses on the main road, right? They need customers, but it's illegal to park on the main road. The TTPS argument is, who gave them permission in the first place? My argument would be, it doesn't matter. They're parking illegally. Let the TTPS do something about it. In this day and age, if we're speaking about culturally, Trinidad and Tobago has a culture of crime right now. And if you want to stamp it out, you can no longer be so nice and so soft and so easy. You have to enforce the law. And it's unfortunate people might have to get arrested. But at the end of the day, that is probably the only way Trinidad and Tobago is going to learn a lesson. So all the points that you put forward to me this morning, sir, I know you're speaking on behalf of the TTPS, but quite frankly, do you all have common sense? No. Because TTPS sense and common sense is two different things, it would seem.
Would you like me to respond now or after the break?
Actually, after the break.
After the break. Hey, the professor always say we don't uphold our law and order in the nation. So as we were talking about a breakdown with the alcohol sales situation, my co-host as well as pointed out a general breakdown in our law and order in society. Whose fault is that? I don't know if the media ambassador could respond directly to that question, but we have to take a break for news on your end, WESN. When we return, we'll open the phone lines, ask the question of the day, but of course, our TTPS media ambassador will be here to answer your questions as well. So stay tuned. News on the hour right now.
Here's your WESN News on the Hour. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Penal man in court for sexual touching of a minor. 4 fishermen missing out at sea, boat recovered. Opposition chief whip takes government to task on dragon gas deal. And internationally, over 1,000 killed in 7.8 magnitude quake in Turkey. Now for the details. A 41-year-old penal man was granted bail with surety in the sum of $50,000 when he appeared before a Couva magistrate charged with sexual touching of a minor. The accused, a construction worker, was charged with the offense and the matter adjourned to March 1st. The victim and her mother reported to police that on December 31st, she was at her home when a male relative entered her bedroom where he touched her inappropriately. Officers of the Child Protection Unit were contacted and an investigation launched into the matter, which resulted in a male suspect being arrested on January 31st. 4 fishermen remain missing out at sea after their boat was recovered in the Cedros area. Communication was lost with the men on Saturday and a search team launched. The boat was found by a passing vessel. The missing fishermen of Grand Lagoon are Captain Hiralal Kublal, Rishi Kemchan, and 2 others. They left aboard the vessel Benam 2. It was the first fishing trip with the vessel. The Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard is actively assisting. Opposition Chief Whip David Lee is taking the government to task on the dragon gas deal. Speaking at the opposition conference on Sunday, Lee said that the government needs to clear the air as there are still many questions left unanswered, mainly the fact that there was no official Venezuelan correspondence since the announcement.
This morning the opposition is calling on the Prime Minister to be honest and realistic with the people of our nation, as well as all national energy stakeholders, by telling us what is the real story with this dragon gas deal.
In international news now, a rescue operation is underway across much of southern Turkey and northern Syria following a huge earthquake that has killed more than 1,000 people. The 7.8 magnitude quake struck the early hours of Monday while people were asleep, and dozens of aftershocks have been felt since. Turkey's President Erdogan said 912 people had been killed in Turkey alone, with more than 5,300 wounded. Authorities are racing to save people trapped beneath the rubble after hundreds of buildings collapsed in both countries. Well, that was your news to the hour on WESN. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for watching.
Sing for your lover, baby, sing for your lover.
But that is not the song.
That is my version for the Valentine's Day promo on WESN.
WESN presents its Valentine's Day promotion, Sing for Your Lover.
Send us a video of the best rendition of your favorite love song for the one you love. All contestants have a chance to win a variety of exciting prizes. Send us your entries to thecontentcapital@gmail.com. All videos will be posted to our social media pages and will be shown on WESN.
Well, okay then. Let me sing for my lover. Let me sing for my lover.
My lover.
Sing for me, lover, darling, sing. Don't sing like that for your lover at all, ladies and gentlemen. They leave you on Valentine's Day.
I thought you didn't want to sing.
I will sing. I will sing. Not right now, you know. But thank you very much to Denise Martin for news on the hour, ladies and gentlemen. We now have time to open up the phone lines, and before we put the phone lines on the screen, Sean, do you have a question of the day?
Well, so the question of the day, folks, that we want to ask you, do you think TNT is safer now that we have a substantive commissioner of police? We are finally, after, a year and a half, almost 2 years, the role has been appointed. We have someone to fill that position. How much safer do you feel now that we have a permanent commissioner of police? Let us know what you think.
That's a very strange question, but it's very subjective at this point in time.
So we're open, folks. Your interpretation. What is your criteria? You know, what do you think the impact of the person, or just having anyone in the office who isn't a total, empty suit?
Actually, so before we go,
yes, please.
But before that,
I just want to inform that even though that we are treating with certain things, there's an offense. Once there's an offense, there's a penalty. So let me just read this penalty here for you under the Act, section 48 of 8410. Any officer without a warrant may arrest and detain any person who unlawfully deals in retail, sell, expose for sale, or offers for sale, or in his possession for the purpose of sale, any intoxicating liquor. Could be arrested and put before the magistrate or even according to law. The penalty, any person knowingly. So if you allow an individual to, you are aiding and abetting, right? A penalty of $2,000, right? And if you receive, buy intoxicating liquor from a person not authorized to sell, you can incur a penalty of $4,000. So if you go to a location where you're going to buy alcohol and they sell to somebody who doesn't have a license, we have an offense like that. So there are offenses, there are fines and penalties, but you have to go before the magistrate. I mean, Carnival Monday and Tuesday, you don't want to arrest some individual who's trying to.
Sounding more like the magistrate is not going to be.
Right.
So
he didn't say that.
But we have a duty of care not only to enforce the law, but to inform the public as to the type of laws that we have and the penalties. We have a responsibility to do that way, because if we don't do it, it means that we just being very high-handed, and we may not be approaching it from a common sense perspective, but we do have common sense perspective how we treat with it. So on the other hand, before we ask this caller, I would ask caller just a hold for 1 minute. Sure. I must respond to this.
Please do.
The Eastern Main Road, for an example, the entire Eastern Main Road is a no parking area. However, I would like persons with your influence in the media, that when the police starts to issue tickets along the Eastern Main Road, you will support us and don't go and say that we are only targeting the small man for simple traffic offenses and go and run after criminals
the
and
big
figs and all of that.
I have 2 points to make, but when you start, that's my simple point. We have a caller on the line with us. Good morning, caller.
Morning, caller, you're live. Hi, morning.
wonderful program as usual, and I want to this morning. I mean, the question of the day. I want to say yes, and it deals with perception. However, Keaton, I'm not sure of his name, but your colleague on the left of you, which should be your right. I understand his point with respect to his disrespect to the ASP just now with his statement concerning the police. But I would endorse it. And until the police service could at least show me that they have a work program and a plan and a proper strategic plan going forward, they will not have my support until I know that they are on the right track. I've known the present commissioner of police since he came in as an officer in the finance branch. I was a senior officer in the branch, and she has grown immensely from a WPC to the commissioner of police, coming through the ranks. So I know that she has a full understanding of the service and will definitely make a change. You know, so ASP, I wish you all the best. I know you all will do an excellent job for the carnival. With respect to the licensed guys who go around hustling in the savannah, if you were to take 10 of your officers to arrest 10 of them, what will happen to your strength at the savannah? Food for thought. Have a nice day, gentlemen.
Have a nice day,
wonderful.
Oh, thank you very much.
And the caller is right with respect to what he's saying. So we respect his view, considering the fact that he has an experience. It means that he would have been part of our organization for some years now, right? Based on information. So it's about utilizing our resources more effectively for Carnival, as the caller indicated. So I think you have another caller?
Yeah. We have a caller now with us from Caxton Bay. Good morning, caller.
Yeah, hi, good morning.
Good morning.
So everybody there. The point I want to know, why it is that the police and them continue to hold people and they're talking about enforcing, well, Keaton was talking about that, enforcing the law. Why it is that the law is not enforcing? Why it is the judiciary seems like they don't want to enforce laws so that the things could go right in the country, and the police and them continue to be getting all this that are linked to all this problem that is going on. How is that happening? Then we having people who charge. We still holding position in this country. How is that? All in the parliament, all in the lawyer fraternity. How we want to go forward when the crooks and them seeing all these corruption happening in this country? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
caller.
Actually, we have a caller now with us from Europe. Good morning, caller.
Good morning.
Program as usual.
Thank you.
I want to say morning to the police officer who is on the program with you.
Morning, sir.
What I want to say, you all hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Right. What I want to say is that national security has been given a hefty budget over the years, right? And the police service, in particular, because national security comprises of, other branches like the prison, the army, and whatever. I am specifically talking about the police service now. I think the police service is not coming up to scratch based on certain things they have been getting to work with. For example, like crime, we know what the murder rate, right? 600 murders this year. How many solved? We're checking on the ratio. How many solved? Right? And it seemed to me as though the police service is categorizing gang murders as though they know how to go out and investigate and try to solve it. You understand? So they categorize it as a gang crime. and you're not hearing anybody held. I don't watch this program 48 hours. Within 48 hours, they try to solve certain crime. And in America, they had the crime, the gang unit, this unit, the other unit, and they're going out to solve, no matter what, is a murder is a murder.
Yeah.
You think? And I find with the resources we have, because a country could get any amount of resources from America, you know, but they had to show the willingness that they want to solve crime. If they deal with drugs, they provide all different things for them, assets.
All right, cool.
And I want to say the police marine branch should be brought back. Mr. Gary Griffith tried something with some marine, what do you call it?
Maritime?
Not the marine branch, with
Riverine patrol.
It was too small to start with.
Yeah, yeah.
You think?
All right, caller.
Thank you, caller. Sorry, but we have another caller, I believe, right?
Yes.
Waiting.
Caller with us from St. James. Good morning, caller.
Hello?
Hi, good morning.
Morning, you're on the air.
Yeah, good morning to you guys.
Good morning.
The question for the officer. Probably you will have to get some information from the traffic branch. Is Wrighton Road off limits of banned? Or I'll tell you why. Trying to get from east, going into the Gomartin area or anywhere in the west, it's very frustrating to bounce up a ban when you're using Wrighton Road. This is why I'm asking if Wrighton Road is off limits during Carnival, Monday and Tuesday. Bye.
Thank you. Acting SP, I don't know, just before we go to the next caller, whether or not...
Carnival bans.
Carnival bans are not allowed on Wrighton Road for Carnival Monday and Tuesday. The challenge of my face is bans may use that as a route, may venture on it for Juve, right? But you don't get Carnival bans per se, Carnival mask bans.
They're not allowed.
They're not allowed
right.
on
and they're actively kept off.
Yes, they are kept off. The area that sometimes you might get a ban passing to get back into some of the side street, come out of our side street, but you don't get bans on Wrighton Road.
So you're not supposed to call her. We have another caller from
San Fernando. Good morning, caller.
Morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Morning, ASP.
Good morning.
You remember last week I asked you about the challenge the TTPS is having to police Trinidad and Tobago. Now, I want to say this. Keaton and Sean touched on two things this morning. They talked about some of the inefficiencies in the other arms of national security, namely the Air Guard and the Coast Guard. And in my opinion, the TTPS could only be so elastic. The problem is that everything that is inefficient, they want the TTPS to fill in. School issues with discipline, they want the TTPS to fill in.
Yeah.
And there's only so much elasticity in an organization. And I am not, for the life of me, I can't understand why those in authority not seeing this. In addition to which, I want to touch on one other thing quickly. The TTPS, back to what you all want to talk about, Sean and Keaton, the TTPS do not have fit-for-purpose vehicles. They want the TTPS to use regular residential vehicles to patrol Trinidad and Tobago, which are not fit for purpose. And I can tell you this, in the time gone by, there was an issue where there was a company in Trinidad and Tobago that applied or tendered for vehicles to bring fit-for-purpose vehicles, and it was shut down by the administration at the time because they were in support of the TTPS using local companies, which are normal vehicle companies, to buy from them as part of a contribution to the economy. And that doesn't make sense. You can't have TTP, an organization like TTPS. You have a regular vehicle running sometimes 1,000 miles a day. Come on, man. These are things that need to be fixed, and I hope Ms. Christopher could stand up to the administration and get some of those fit-for-purpose vehicles. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, caller, for your contribution. Acting SP.
No, well, the caller is right in what he is mentioning. So I appreciate his comments. We do in fact have some challenges when it comes to vehicle as well as in his words, the elasticity of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service in respect to how it has been pulled in different areas. I am hoping that those issues will be addressed, and that will be addressed by our current Commissioner of Police as she go forward and look at the other strategies in the police service. She would have to put out and make her impact into some of these areas. So I will leave that up to the Commissioner at some point in time.
I just wanted to ask you, Acting SP, you mentioned that the question was, you know, a very strange question.
The question of the day.
Yes,
yes.
And subjective.
The reason why, because when you look at the question of the day, I understand the question and the context of it, but when you look at the question of the day, you say no. When you use no, when you say no, it means it gives a sense of immediacy. Mm-hmm. Yes, you have to give the Commissioner of Police, notwithstanding that she was in the seat for a couple of months, a month or more, and she has been a serving member of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. She's now in the position of the Commissioner. There are certain things that could be done now and certain things that will be done. So I'm saying, to be fair across the board, she needs to be given that opportunity to stamp her authority and her initiatives, that what she wants to put forward. And once that has been done, I understand the drive of the public to get immediate action because we have a new commissioner, right? But like in everything else, changing the commissioner's seats with the dynamics of Trinidad and Tobago holistically, we have a lawless society in terms of several aspects of it. So it will take a little tweaking in certain areas to get some of the issues and challenges that we face to actually be ironed out in terms of, because murder is really and truly the highest challenge that we have and the greatest challenge we have. So in my view, when I say the question is very subjective, at the end of the day, you will get callers calling in from different perspectives and giving their perspectives, but at the end of the day, it is subjected to how they view certain things.
Well, we gotta go to this caller, but just bear this in mind. You just said TNT is a lawless society.
It is.
Perhaps this is why you should enforce law and start issuing the tickets.
Very well, sir.
Good morning, caller from Princestown.
Yes, good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Okay, responding to your question, I think that of course, having a permanent police commissioner would make a difference, right, in the decision-making process on behalf of these PTPS and so on, right? One other thing I'd like to issue, I heard you mention this morning on your program that the Coast Guard do not have any patrols at night. What proof you have of this? Do you have a boat that is outside there monitoring the Coast Guard to see if there are patrols out in the night? They don't announce. They wouldn't announce it, just like the TTPS don't tell you how much patrols they have on the road at night, and especially outside there where citizens will usually be at night. You cannot say that the Coast Guard do not have patrols outside there.
All right, caller.
That is all.
Thank you. A very good point, but caller, you have to listen more attentively next time because my co-host said allegedly.
It is alleged.
He said allegedly.
And it wasn't alleged by us.
We do not have evidence. He has suggested allegedly, and there were a couple of times on this program, I think on at least 2 occasions, it could have been 3, in which there was a fisherman from Claxton Bay who called in to say that these fishermen went out, pirates came and attacked them. They've called the Coast Guard, and the Coast Guard never has any gas in their patrol vessels. So on that alone, one can make the assumption if they don't have any gas to actually go for the search and rescue, then you would assume they don't have gas to do the patrol.
Well, also,
like I said, trust on the word allege.
Somebody also did make the claim that they've seen illegal immigrants coming through the northwest and not a Coast Guard patrol to be seen. And we have heard, again it is alleged, that perhaps there are times when patrols are called off at certain times. Again, it is alleged. The proof is in the fact that the borders are porous.
I think that's the best proof, actually.
That's just, the evidence that that substantiates or helps further that claim is that the borders are porous. So I won't mind if the Coast Guard comes with counter evidence and says, no, this is not true because X, Y, and Z. I need to see that first.
Caller on the line with us. Final call for the morning, actually, from QRF. Good morning, caller.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I want to say the Coast Guard does not be out there in the night as they're supposed to. Because a lot of persons get into difficulties, and when they call the Coast Guard, they cannot get results. During the COVID, I look how many things coming through the country. Illegal birds, illegal meat, contraband, armed and ammunition. We pass it through the Gulf from Venezuela to come through the Gulf and into Port of Spain and all the open illegal ports of entry. The Coast Guard under the COVID, they had 13 vessels down. They say that 13 vessels was not working. You ever hear about that in our country? 13 vessels? And the Minister of National Security did nothing about it? We sleeping. I want the police marine branch to be reinstituted in a big way. If we fight in crime, the government don't have to pay for those vessels. The American government would subsidize and send it for us.
Thank you.
Thank you, caller.
Thank you, caller.
I want to hit that point with regards to budget, because one caller said that there's a hefty budget for the police over the years. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. We know about the National Security Ministry budget allocation. I don't think we necessarily know about the TTPS budget allocation. And I do know that a couple of years ago, you know, the then commissioner had to complain, well, the horses and the police dogs, their feed had to be paid out of pocket by the officers that's working alongside them, because we didn't have money for that in our budget. We didn't have enough money to pay contractors in our budget. I know I was one of them. And I think we need to realize that a good chunk of the budget will have to go for the salaries to the Coast Guard, to the Defense Force, for the equipment, for the helicopters, to buy the new boats, to apparently, supposedly maintain the boats, but we're not necessarily spending money on that because boats are breaking down, to gas and fuel and supply the boats. So it's not just the police taking, what, 5 billion? It's not going on to the police, which is why I said maybe we should question what is the point of some of these services that the bulk of our national security needs are domestic and crime oriented, not borders, not military security from an aggressor.
Well, I mean,
you know,
more to unpack, more to analyze, more to debate, more to uncover. Unfortunately, we don't have the time. I'm so sorry.
We do have more time to do it.
I just saying, you can't use a soldier to solve crimes. That is different training, it's different organizations. It don't work. As much as we want it to work, that's not going to work.
Acting ASP, though I disagree with many of the things that have been said and the position of which not you, but the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service has taken or is taking. Thank you very much for your service and your hard work, sir, and it's always a pleasure having you on this program. Look forward to more discussions.
It's a pleasure, and it's a pleasure to have your point of view, because it gives us an understanding of how many of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago and the influence that you have on many of the citizens listening to this program, how they view certain things. So it gives us a better opportunity, and that is what we are here to do. Listen to some of the comments from the citizen. Right, and I know that the Commissioner and our Corporate Communication Unit do in fact view some of the comments that come in from all of our social media platforms, and they do take actions. It may not be major things, but we do certain things that would, over the years, and see some fruits of our efforts. But thank you very much.
Certainly, sir. Well, I wish you all the very best, and well, keep safe and keep all over the carnival. You know, I mean, you know, crime is one thing. Virus is still out there with us. So
yes, it's so true.
Yes, certainly be careful. Sean Michael Small, happy Monday.
It's a great Monday, isn't it? Carnival right around the corner. You could feel the energy in the air. Folks, just stay safe in all things. COVID is still a thing, as Michael has said, but also as the TTPS Media Ambassador, ASP Ali, also says, you know, crime, safety, drinking, driving, don't take your life for granted, folks.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for Talking Point this morning here on WSN Content Capital. I'm Keaton Shaw, wishing you all the very best in your day ahead and in the week ahead. Enjoy the festivities, but of course, as always, be very safe, be very careful, and just remember everything in reasonable proportion and quantity. Anyway, today is a good day to have a good day and a great week ahead. And look out, the TTPS are coming to the Eastern Main Road soon. It's a place near you. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.